Hi, I'm Kevin Deal. Today we're going to take a look at the PrimaLuna ProLogue Premium Preamp. I was just reading this review from Stereophile magazine written by Herb Reichert. Herb is one of the guys on my cool guy list. He's like so smart. He knows tube equipment so well. He's kind of I don't know, an icon for the people that work in the industry because everybody loves Herb. He's a cross between, I don't know how to put it, like Keith Richards and the Dalai Lama. If he happens to hear this, he'll probably get a giggle out of that. But just a cool dude, and he's really, really, really smart. And I was reading what he said about this preamp, and he compared it to the 1962 Alfa Romeo Giulietta Spider. It seemed more feminine and seductive. It danced, laughed uncontrollably, and sang. It guzzled French wine by the bottle and would, after enough wine, kiss me full on the lips. Then he goes on to finish, in the conclusion he says, in even a very expensive system, it will not set limits on musical enjoyment. As I concluded in my review of PrimaLuna's ProLogue Premium Power Amp, Class A sound at a Class C price. You need to know something. Manufacturers are overcharging for preamps. They're giving you mediocre parts for $5,000 and in a preamp that weighs 13 pounds. This preamp weighs 37.5 pounds, and it is chock full of the best parts and the best technology. Let's take a look and see what it does. First of all, it is dual mono. It is literally two preamps all the way to the power switch. That's expensive to build. Underneath this cover are two massive toroidal power transformers. What's important about that? Toroids cost about 5 times more than a regular transformer costs, so manufacturers rarely will spend that money. But there's a big benefit to them. They don't radiate EMI. They don't pollute the signal path with garbage and junk. But not only are these toroidal transformers and massive, they're potted. What does that mean? They're sealed in epoxy and then mounted into a can. And that does two things. It protects them from the elements for a lifetime, and you want to do that with such an expensive part. The other thing is, it reduces acoustic noise. It protects them from microphony. It's really, people don't look underneath. You've got to go to Google Images, type in the model number of the preamp you're considering, and go to Google, go to Images, and look inside. You're not going to see that type of build. Right next to the transformers, there's a couple of big, hefty chokes, and then right here, this is the magic. Two 5AR4 rectifier tubes. Tube rectification is the gold standard. If you look at the top of the line preamps from other manufacturers, they're going to be tube rectified or have tube regulation. Why? Because then it's a pure tube circuit. It's going to give you all the glory that you're looking for in a tube component. You don't want to put it in a power amp. It's something that you want to reserve in a preamp, because in a power amp you can get something called voltage sag. In a preamp, it's the way that you want to do it. It's also quieter, and it helps protect the tubes because they don't get thwacked whenever you turn the power on. It extends tube life. Let's talk about the tubes. It uses two 12AU7s per channel. The tubes are wired in parallel internally and then in parallel to each other. The benefit of that is 5 or 10 years down the road when the tubes get old, if one of those triodes gets a little droopy, which can happen, you're most likely never going to hear that there's a problem. This preamp has only 12 dB of gain. That's an important thing. If you were to plug your CD player directly into your power amp, it would blow you out of the room. So when you're using a preamp, you're not adding gain. You are attenuating gain, usually by 6 dB or more. So if you get a preamp with 23, 25, 27 dB of gain, you got to do something with it. That means thermal noise. That also means noise and microphony problems. And you're not going to have that with this preamp. 12 dB of gain, it is as quiet as a church mouse. It uses the 12AU7 tube because it's an amazing tube, made in more factories around the world than any other part. So if you want to fine-tune the sound because you go from a pair of Martin Logan speakers to a pair of Focals, and you want to get a little bit more air or a little less air, just change out one 12AU7 per channel to get the color that you want. If you like the effect, do it to the next pair. And then in the world of vintage tubes, like new old stock Mullards and Telefunkens and Siemens and Brimars, there are more 12AU7s available than any other part, and it makes them cheap, plentiful, big selection. Let's look inside because this is rocking. Starting down here, PrimaLuna does not use chips for volume control. I understand that manufacturers want to use it because they cost like $2 each. I wish they wouldn't do it because they sound kind of flat, just a little bit flat, and they also add a little bit of an electronic sheen to the music. This part costs over $50. It costs many times more with a chip. This is an Alps motorized blue velvet potentiometer. That's the gold standard. They are quiet, they track better, they last forever, they're made in Japan, they are analog, and that's what PrimaLuna is all about, the best parts. The entire signal path is hand-wired with point-to-point wiring. There is no printed circuit board in the signal path. I see preamps that cost $8,000 and $10,000. You spend all this money on interconnect. You spend $500, $1,000 on an interconnect. And inside the preamp, you're going to see a computer ribbon cable to hook up the tubes to the rest of the circuitry. It's ridiculous. Not here. It's all hand-wired. And it's chock full of fabulous parts. Duroche capacitors, Solon capacitors made in France. These are the tube sockets, which are all ceramic. They're all panel mounted. These are the 5AR4 rectifier tubes here. Big Nichicon capacitors made in Japan. These are the big toroidal transformers I told you about. Now, this is some slick engineering here. Instead of a selector switches are not your friend because they don't turn off the other inputs completely and they get noisy and deteriorate. So instead of doing that, PrimaLuna put a controller board up in the front panel. It opens and closes hermetically sealed relays made in Japan by Takamasawa, a division of Fujitsu. These relays are hermetically sealed, guaranteed for 50,000 openings and closings, and because they're mounted in the back here, the signal path is now that long. And when you select CD as an example, that relay closes, giving you the best contact possible. All the other relays are left open. So it acts as a gatekeeper to keep out noise. There's all kinds of junk that comes in from your other inputs, and this helps to keep it out. Again, I don't know what else to say about this preamp except you need to do something. Don't buy something just because of good reviews. I mean, it's fine that Herb said those things, and all the reviewers, they either love PrimaLuna, but more important, they use PrimaLuna. Herb's been using this preamp as his reference for 2 years. That's what you need to look for. You need to look for something that's built well. You need to look for something that weighs something. Buy something that's iconic, that you'll be happy to own 10 years later. The PrimaLuna ProLogue Premium.